NewsX World. Let's look at the top headlines this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 24 Russian drones entered Poland overnight, some using Belarusian airspace, in what he calls a dangerous precedent for Europe. Poland confirms 19 violations, shoots down several drones, and asks NATO to invoke Article 4 as damage is reported inside its territory. Israel's ambassador to the United States says if Hamas leaders survived Tuesday's strike in Qatar, Israel will succeed next time, downplaying global criticism. Leiter, the US ambassador, says Fox News the operation may draw backlash for now, but argues Israel is being changed for the better. UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed arrives in Qatar in a show of solidarity after Israel's airstrike on Hamas officials in the capital. Jordan's Crown Prince visits later today, with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman expected in Doha on Thursday. Iran and the UN nuclear watchdog announced a deal to resume inspections at facilities damaged by US and Israeli airstrikes in June, though details remain unclear. Tehran warns the agreement will collapse if Europe reimposes sanctions, even as it faces pressure to account for enriched uranium stockpiles. French police arrest dozens as protesters from a new Block Everything movement disrupt highways and traffic across the country. The demonstrations, organised on social media, draw comparisons to the 2018 Yellow Vest uprising against President Macron's economic reforms. President Donald Trump says his administration is negotiating to remove trade barriers with India and will speak to Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the coming weeks. Trump strikes a more optimistic tone, expressing hope the two sides can finalise a deal after weeks of friction. French President Emmanuel Macron names 39-year-old Defence Minister Sebastien Lecornu as Prime Minister, signalling continuity with his pro-business agenda. The pick, a loyalist, could alienate left-wing allies and leave Macron reliant on far-right support in Parliament. Soldiers patrol Kathmandu as an indefinite curfew grips Nepal's capital after days of deadly anti-graft protests that forced Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign. The unrest, sparked by a social media ban, left 19 dead when police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse demonstrators. We start this hour in Europe, where reactions are pouring in from across the globe regarding the airspace violation of Poland by Russian drones overnight. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated that it is time to act and described Russia's move as reckless. Poland had earlier reported that 19 objects entered its territory. Reacting to the drone attacks, the Lithuanian Foreign Minister said there is no confirmation whether the incursions into Poland were intentional and added that NATO needs to come together. The Chinese Foreign Ministry also reacted to the incident, saying that they are not aware of any airspace violation. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
No one is safe here. No one is safe in the region. No one is safe in Europe and within the alliance. Because those incidents are very close to the situations when everything is going to escalate and where everyone will be involved into something that we want to avoid. And the key to avoid that and the key to prevent this from happening is protection and pressure on Russia. This is how we see the situation. Till we don't have the confirmation that there was intentional attacks.
中方在乌克兰危机上的立场一贯明确，对话谈判是解决乌克兰危机的唯一可行出路。我们呼吁有关各方遵守战场不外溢、战事不升级、各方不拱火三原则，推动局势降温，为政治解决危机积累条件。
We are now joined by Alison Mutler. She is the former Associated Press bureau chief, and she joins us live from Bucharest in Romania. Thank you very much, Alison, for joining us here. on the programme. Alison, Poland have initiated Article 4 in NATO. This comes with multiple European leaders expressing serious concern about this situation. Do you think that worry is warranted by Poland and also the nations surrounding it? Okay, we seem to have some issues there with our network. Hopefully we will have Alison joining us very briefly. We are of course covering the developing situation of the day, which includes 19 reported drones which crossed into Polish airspace overnight. Poland, of course, a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, otherwise known as NATO, in which it is a bloc where, which includes 27 member European countries, the United States and others, and they are expected to be a huge opposition to Russia. We're now joined by Alison Mutler. She is the former Associated Bureau Chief, and he joins us live from Bucharest in Romania. Thank you very much for joining us, Alison. Of course, we've seen some huge reactions from many European leaders about these reported 19 drones entering into Polish airspace. Is their reaction warranted?
Thank you for having me. My name is Mohammed Osman and I'm from Cairo. I'm an international relations specialist, and I'd be very much obliged to answer your question, no problem. Well, I think that we are looking at an unprecedented escalation when it comes to the Russo-Ukrainian war. For the first time, the war is apparently spilling over in countries in Poland, which is a NATO of the Western arms and military aid in general. And it seems the scenarios that could be entertained here, maybe this was an accident because today Ukraine was being subjected to a massive drone strike. Hundreds of drones were used, maybe 20 of them strayed into Polish airspace. It's not unheard of. It happened in Romania before, and it happened in Moldova. However, this time the scale of the straying drones was rather unprecedented, and some of them had to be shot down. And the other scenario, of course, that we can entertain and that I believe is more plausible is that this was Russia basically testing the waters of how serious NATO's collective defense mechanisms are, and whether they are willing to actively and quickly respond to any sort of Russian transgression against the sovereignty or the security of a NATO member state. And I think that this happened this morning. Fighter jets from several NATO countries, Romania, Estonia, and others, and the US, of course, scrambled in the air and intercepted some of these drones. This is an indication that the continuation of the Russia-Ukraine war poses a very serious threat, not only to European stability, but to global stability as well. Because if this ever descends into a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia, this means it will be a war of total annihilation, a world war. And of course, nobody wants that. Nobody would intentionally walk into that minefield, whether the Europeans, the Americans, or the Russians. But it does underline the very urgent need for a very quick settlement in Ukraine.
Yes, thank you very much, Mohammed, for giving us your input into that and bringing us some context. Do stay with us, but we do have some further updates coming out of Europe now, where France is facing a fresh wave of unrest as the Block Everything protest movement causes major highway disruptions across the country. The movement called for a general strike and nationwide shutdown on the 10th of September 2025 to oppose the austerity measures proposed by the government of François Bayrou. More than 200 people were arrested today as demonstrators blocked roads in cities like Bordeaux, Toulouse, Lyon and Paris. Protesters say France's political system is broken. The unrest follows major political shake-ups just 2 days after Parliament ousted Prime Minister Bayrou. President Macron has now appointed his 5th PM, Sebastien Lecornu, in under 2 years. Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau says 80,000 security forces have been deployed across France, including 6,000 in Paris. Authorities fear the protests could grow in the coming days. Let's in fact listen in to what some of the protesters had to say.
Ce gouvernement, je suis là en tant que syndicaliste enseignant. Je suis là parce que ce gouvernement illégitime doit être bloqué. Bayrou a été chassé, sa politique doit être chassée. La nomination de Lecornu, c'est une provocation. Le budget de guerre, le budget d'austérité, on n'en veut pas. On ne veut pas de la marche à la guerre, on ne veut pas de l'austérité. On veut l'argent pour les services publics, on veut l'argent pour l'école, pour les hôpitaux. Donc on a répondu à l'appel de cette journée de tout bloquer. Et la question se pose de bloquer actuellement le pays pour obtenir satisfaction sur nos revendications.
Du coup, on comptait venir déjà de base avant la destitution de Bayrou et la nomination de Lecornu, mais je pense que ça nous a engagés encore plus à venir parce que c'est un pied de nez qui nous fait là. Donc ouais, je pense que c'est important d'être là et de montrer qu'on ne veut plus de lui au gouvernement, qu'on ne veut plus de ces gouvernements successifs et qu'on a besoin de changement.
Je suis venu pour manifester et bloquer contre Macron et son monde en fait, tout simplement, puisque même s'il a fait sauter Bayrou, il nous a mis Lecornu hier. Et c'est Macron qui continue à faire du Macron. Donc on veut plus de pouvoir d'achat, de la justice sociale, de la justice fiscale. Et on veut aussi plus de démocratie. Ce serait bien que ce soit respecté un peu dans ce pays.
Nous aussi, on veut dénoncer, c'est surtout les conditions de travail dans l'entreprise, les cadences, les performances, la productivité dans l'entreprise, les droits qui sont bafoués, surtout les droits des syndicats. Et c'est un peu ça qu'on veut mettre en lumière.
Pour des raisons purement, on dira même pas idéologiques, mais pour une question de bon sens. Parce qu'on est dans une société où l'humain n'a plus beaucoup sa place, où on est dans une société où il faut produire et encore produire pour on ne sait pas quoi. Donc je pense qu'il faut redonner du sens à la vie et privilégier l'humain avant tout.
Okay, we are now showing live visuals from Paris, where you can see riot police there. In full riot gear as these block everything protests get underway. As we've said, 60,000 officers have been dispersed across France by the French government in preparation for these protesters, where demonstrations are happening throughout the country, including that of Paris, Bordeaux, Lyon, Toulouse. We can see some quite compelling images there coming out of France. We're now joined by Alexander Sial. He is a French journalist and he joins us live from London. Alexander, are you with us? Okay. We have, unfortunately, have some network issues. We're, of course, covering this story that's going on in France right now. This comes just a day after France's new Prime Minister takes office. Sebastien Lecornu, a loyalist picked by French President Emmanuel Macron to be France's 5th Prime Minister in 2 years, with the backdrop of chaos erupting on the streets throughout France, where they are blocking roads, expected to cause widespread disruption to travellers, through exporters throughout the country. Okay. Lecornu is a conservative who has most recently served as Macron's defence minister. These protests, however, are in response to his predecessor Bayrou's austerity measures, which he announced earlier this year. These protests have been organised for a while now, hence the increased police presence throughout the French country. Okay, we have some more developments coming out of France, where France's new Prime Minister, Lecornu, has taken office. This comes as massive anti-government protests have rocked the country. Lecornu is France's 5th Prime Minister in 2 years, and he has most recently served as the Defence Minister and has arrived at the Prime Minister's residence, where he met with former Prime Minister François Bayrou, who was just ousted by Parliament over plans to trim the country's outsized deficit. We will continue to bring you all the news coming out of France as we do get it. However, we now move on and over to West Asia, where the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike targeting Hamas leaders in Doha, Qatar, has sparked global condemnation and raised serious concerns over the future of ceasefire talks in Gaza. Israeli officials confirmed the strike aimed to eliminate top Hamas figures, but the group's leadership reportedly survived. The attack, which killed several Hamas members, including the son of a senior leader, came amid delicate peace negotiations being mediated by Qatar. Israel's ambassador to the United States warned that if the strike failed to kill Hamas leaders, this time they would be targeted again. Meanwhile, Qatar condemned the attack as state terrorism and warned it could derail ongoing peace efforts. We're now joined by Mohammed Osman. He is an international relations specialist, and he joins us live from Cairo in Egypt. Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us here on the program and taking the time to speak to us. Mohammed, we've just heard from the Israeli ambassador. He seems to be going and narrating this attack in an unapologetic way, even given the global condemnation. What are your thoughts on the ambassador's words there, where Israel says that something like this could happen again?
Once again, thank you for having me. I think that Israel now is basically on the precipice of an unprecedented escalation in the region. Israel has escalated its war way beyond the Gaza Strip and the occupied Palestinian territories. It expanded and spilled over into Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, even Iran. But no one thought that a neutral country that plays a role in the mediation and a core U.S. ally in the region, like Qatar, which hosts the largest military base in the world, would be subjected to such a horrendous violation of its sovereignty by Israel. Israel, it seems, carried out this assassination attempt on Hamas's remaining top leadership, not for the purpose of the assassinations. We have to understand that most of Hamas's prominent and effective leaders have been assassinated or eliminated already by the Israeli military over the past couple of years. I think that the actual aim of this attack, that the real motive behind it, was torpedoing ongoing initiatives to end the war. As we all know, right before this attack, President Trump presented an initiative or a vision for ending the war. He proposed a hostage exchange deal and a ceasefire and actual negotiations on ending the war, on the issue of the disarmament of Hamas, and also on the withdrawal of the Israeli occupation army from Gaza. Of course, Israel does not really agree with this direction. They pretend to agree, and for them to find a way out of it, they basically torpedo or sabotage the entire initiative by attempting to take out Hamas leaders in Doha. This escalation, of course, eliminates any chances of de-escalation in the near future, which allows Israel to proceed forward with its ground assault on the city of Gaza, the last remaining urban center in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. And of course, the obliteration of Gaza City, like other cities in the Gaza Strip, will have dire humanitarian consequences and will ensure that the last few remaining features of life in the Gaza Strip would be ultimately eliminated and removed, therefore paving the way for the displacement of the Palestinians out of Gaza, which is basically an act of ethnic cleansing, as we all know, in accordance with the international law. So these seem to be the actual Israeli motives, and now they are even promising, vowing to escalate further and to target Qatar once again if needed, even though President Trump said that he assured the Qataris that this will never be repeated again, or that this will never happen again. However, of course, it seems that the U.S. was not tricked into this. This happened, I believe, with a U.S. green light, even if they do not admit it. And I think that the United States is complicit in Israel's designs in the region, and they do agree with Israel's approach to dealing with the situation in Gaza, including the displacement of the Palestinians and the liquidation of the entire Palestinian cause as an ultimate solution for the Israel-Palestine conflict. Basically, a one-state solution for Israelis, and the Palestinians will just have to find some other place to live. This is the US-Israeli formula that is being pushed in a very subtle way right now.
Mohammed, do stay with us. We have further updates to cover from this developing situation. When asked about how Israel's targeting of Hamas may affect ceasefire talks, US Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee said, quote, "We don't know," highlighting uncertainty in the path forward. Let's listen in to his statements.
We simply don't know. Hamas has rejected everything so far. They continually reject every offer that's put on the table. They rejected one the other day that pretty much has been the position of the president throughout, and that is they have to surrender, they have to go, they can't stay and have any future in Gaza, and they have to let all of the hostages go. And they have utterly rejected that. How this affects it, I simply think the answer is we don't know.
We're once again joined by Mohammed Osman. Mohammed, a lot of people are saying that these ceasefire talks are not going to be able to be restored in the way that they have been previously. There's certainly an element of trust there, which will have diminished after these strikes. What are your thoughts on the possible future of diplomacy here in this conflict?
I do agree with you that the bridges of trust and confidence between the mediator and one of the belligerents, Israel, has been utterly and completely eviscerated at this point. Israel saw to that yesterday with its strike on Doha. Qatar and Egypt are the prime mediators between Israel and the Palestinian factions in the Gaza Strip, of course, chief among them, Hamas. And if you see Israel's relationship with the mediators, it is far from cordial, as you have seen already, because of the idea of the displacement of the Palestinians out of Gaza. Tensions between Egypt and Israel have reached unprecedented levels since the signing of the peace treaty between both countries in 1979. The relations between both countries have reached a very low point. And now even with Qatar, which enjoyed a historically calm and stable relationship with the Israelis, and they always played a very important role in mediation process historically as well. The relationship has all but collapsed at this point between both countries. So I cannot really imagine how Qatar and Egypt will be able to continue seriously with this mediation process in a productive way when there is no room for dialogue between them and Israel, and when there is a crisis of confidence and trust. And also the United States, the third mediator, is far from being impartial. The United States is completely biased towards the Israeli stance, and they are basically the mediator of necessity because they are the only party that can apply pressure on the Israelis and actually tell them what to do. And of course, the United States has not been doing that over the past few months. If anything, President Trump and his administration have been enabling Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government to do basically whatever they want in the entire region, and not only in the occupied Palestinian territories. Of course, this deepens the crisis in the region, and also it increases the chances of regional escalation in general. As we all know, that this conflict is not only limited now to Gaza. There are simmering tensions in Lebanon that threaten to reignite the front between Israel and Lebanon, Hezbollah and Lebanon once more. Israel is bracing, reportedly, for attacking Iran once more, maybe before the end of this year with U.S. support. So as you can see, it's all interlinked. if the conflict in Gaza is successfully ended, then basically you pull the plug on most of those tensions and you diffuse them. The Israelis do not want that. They find this as a pristine opportunity to establish themselves as the sole hegemon in the region that enjoys absolute superiority with U.S. support and blessing, it seems. As long as this equation stands and is being pursued by both the United States and Israel, this region will never know peace in the near future.
Yes, thank you, Mohammed. Do stay with us. We have further things to discuss. We have some breaking news coming in. Reportedly, the Russian chargé d'affaires has said that drones shot down in Poland came from Ukraine. Just to repeat that once again, the Russian chargé d'affaires has said that drones shot down in Poland came from Ukraine. Of course, the war of information continues in Europe. We will, of course, bring you all updates that come from both sides as they unfold in that developing situation. However, back to West Asia, where EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has addressed the European Parliament, outlining a series of measures aimed at halting Israel's ongoing offensive in Gaza and supporting the Palestinian people. She announced plans to sanction extremist Israeli ministers, partially suspend the EU's association agreement with Israel, impacting trade matters and also temporarily pausing bilateral support for Israel. Let's listen into her statements.
And this is why I will propose a package of measures to carve out a way forward. First, the Commission will do all that it can do on its own. We will put our bilateral support to Israel on hold. We will stop all payments in these areas without affecting our work with Israeli civil society or Yad Vashem. Second, we will make 2 further proposals to the Council. We will propose sanctions on the extremist ministers and on violent settlers. And we will also propose a partial suspension of the association agreement on trade-related matters. We will set up a Palestine donor group next month, including a dedicated instrument for Gaza reconstruction. This will be an international effort with regional partners, and it will build on the momentum of the New York conference organised by France and Saudi Arabia.
We're once again joined by Mohammed Osman. Mohammed, we have heard these type of measures announced before, the sanctions on settlers and the extremist Israeli ministers. One can only assume she's talking about Bezalel Smotrich and that of Ben Gvir, who have openly expressed statements some would argue as genocidal. What are your thoughts on this new announcement from the EU chief and the impact that they're going to have on Israel's war in Gaza, as she claims for it to be?
I think that the European leaders in general and the European High Commissioner in particular, Mrs. von der Leyen, they can, as the old expression goes, they can talk the talk, but I'm not really sure whether they can walk the walk, basically. I hope they deliver on their promises and their pledges. We have heard this before, as you've just said. They have threatened Israel with very strenuous measures in the past on account of Israel's heinous violations in Gaza and elsewhere. However, they have not delivered. The European Union, of course, is taking now a very progressive stance on Palestine, with a much broader now recognition of Palestinian statehood and stronger support, political support at least, for Palestinian rights in general, and of course in accordance with international law. However, this never materialized into actual concrete steps on the ground to apply pressure on Israel to counter the unlimited support Israel gains from the United States. And even the opinion in Europe is far from unanimous about their position on the solidarity with Palestine. You just heard von der Leyen say that she will propose this to the EU. Of course, it is up to the EU heads of states to agree to whether to take these measures or not. And some countries, chief among them Germany, oppose suspending the association agreement between the European Union and Israel, and they also oppose any kind of sanctions against Israel. And even what is being proposed is sanctions on individuals, like on extremist members of the Israeli government, like Ben Gvir or Smotrich. However, this is far from enough. If actual pressure is to be applied on Israel, then actual sanctions need to be applied on Israel, like the sanctions, for example, the European Union applied on Russia. Now the sanctions they are once again going to apply on Iran, for example. Something along these lines might actually have some sort of effect. However, we're not seeing this on the ground. We are seeing that the Europeans are basically pursuing a certain narrative that would make them appear very supportive of Palestinian rights, and that, in my opinion, is to appease the public opinions in various European countries that is growing very critical of Israel's of how Israel is conducting itself in Gaza, and the nature of Israel of these European nations' relationship with Israel.
Yes, Mohammed, do stay with us. We have further updates from the West Asian region. The IAEA Director General Rafael Moreno Grossi has delivered a statement regarding the agreement with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on practical modalities to resume IAEA activities in Iran. He stated that the inspection deal with Iran is a step in the right direction. He also said in the meeting that Iran showed willingness to remain in the Non-Proliferation Treaty and intends to continue working within the NPT framework. The IAEA Director General also informed that the framework agreement includes all facilities and installations in Iran and contemplates the required reporting on all inspected facilities, including the nuclear material present at those sites. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
It was encouraging for us to see Iran's declared willingness not to leave the NPT and to continue working inside the international non-proliferation regime. Work in Iran, as you know, complete. Dear friends, this technical document provides for a clear understanding of the procedures for inspection, notifications, and their implementation, fully in line with the relevant provisions of the CSA. This includes all facilities and installations in Iran, and it also contemplates the required reporting on all the attacked facilities, including the nuclear material present at those.
We're once again joined by Mohammed Osman to discuss this further. Mohammed, this was obviously central to the 12-day war with Israel and Iran. Is there optimism here with a meeting between and an agreement between the IAEA now reached a framework at least with the Iranian foreign minister there? Okay. Well, that is all that we have time for, unfortunately, but we will continue to bring more updates from across the world. Thank you.